this episode, a high-profile murder puts an incident room under pressure.
This particular case was so horrific, brutal. A woman attacked and killed in her own home.
A northern city is paralysed by fear.
Police are warning women in the area to take extra care.
It scared a whole community. It scared a whole county, Yorkshire.
The hunt for a killer who blends in with the crowd.
This man, he does not look like a monster. And if he was a monster, she'd have shut the door.
And who leaves behind a trail of puzzling clues.
On Wendy's body were found these blue shoes. His daughter's absolutely adamant they didn't belong to the mum.
Leaving detectives consumed by a manhunt that lasts for years.
We scoured the country, we went to Europe, we tried everywhere.
When it grips you, it grips you. At times, I would have said I would have put the investigation before my family.
News on the hour. We're receiving reports that a 51-year-old woman has been found murdered at her home in Wakefield. We'll bring you more when we have it.
Wakefield, West Yorkshire, in 1994. Police are called after the body of Wendy Spees is discovered by work colleagues in her home. Detective Chief Superintendent Bob Taylor is brought in to lead the investigation.
My officers arrived at Wendy Spees' house in the afternoon of the 16th of March. The area had been cordoned off. House-to-house inquiries were being commenced. She had been brutally murdered.
The incident room at Wood Street Police Station in Wakefield is opened.
We had 24 officers seconded from various stations. Generally, I wouldn't take a day off for probably the first 3 weeks of a murder because I wanted to be there. I wanted to be on top of it all the time.
One of the first detectives from the incident room to visit the crime scene was Paul Johnston.
I was Detective Inspector. I worked on the Wendy Spees murder from day one. Wendy had been found upstairs, laying face down on a bed. She'd been stabbed in her back and her neck, seriously sexually assaulted. On the bed was some stockings that had looked like they'd been tied in a noose as if they'd been used as restraints, and also a piece of pink candle wick, which we think was used as a gag. And our job was to start piecing together the investigation to find the person who had done this to Wendy.
Wendy's daughter, Tracy, arrives at the police station, where the incident room is up and running.
I remember ending up being in a room, sitting holding my husband's hand, and then Bob came into the room and he sat down and then he told us that they'd found Mum. He explained that Mum had been raped and stabbed to death. I remember he just reassured us that he would catch the man who'd murdered our Mum.
The crime scene will be critical in the race to identify the killer. The team reviews slides that may hold the key to who killed Wendy.
When I arrived at the scene, it was raining heavily. I came in through the conservatory here. I went up the stairs. I looked through the doorway. I could see Wendy's body. You could see this was quite a small room. It certainly wasn't Wendy's normal bedroom. I think she expected she was going to be sexually assaulted, and she didn't want it happening in her own bed. Nowhere at the scene did I see any signs of a struggle. Whatever Wendy thought was going to happen to her, I don't think she thought she was going to die. Otherwise, I think she'd have fought. He came prepared to commit a premeditated act. He brought a knife, he brought a gag, he had all the tools with him. I've no doubt he decided he was going to go out and rape and kill. This guy was, without doubt, a monster.
So-called stranger murders are very rare in Britain. Most victims are known to the killer.
You start every investigation exactly the same. You have to assume there is a connection between the victim and the killer.
He asked me whether Mum was married, whether she had a boyfriend maybe that they'd split up.
We interviewed Wendy's ex-husband. He had an alibi.
So they were looking for someone else, maybe an acquaintance, someone she'd worked with. Anyone that we could think of that might harm Mum.
You have to eliminate those connections, which we did.
She didn't have any skeletons in the cupboard. She didn't have anyone who didn't like her. There was certainly no obvious person in the frame.
And I was becoming convinced this was a stranger murder. That's when the case really opens up.
Soon, the incident room will have a witness with a potentially critical lead.
The clothing that the suspect was wearing is the same as the clothing that they used to release from Wakefield Prison. They are Category A prisoners. They're all high risk.
And the prison is less than half a mile away from Wendy's front door. March 1994. A city is in fear after the brutal murder of 51-year-old Wendy Spees.
The community in Wakefield was at their wits' end. You know, they really had no idea, and nor did we, whether the same thing was going to happen to some other poor, unfortunate woman in her own home. So there's a massive degree of pressure upon you to find out who did it as quickly as you can.
In the incident room, detectives are working round the clock to identify the killer. Wendy's close friends and family have been eliminated as potential suspects. It's feared her murder may have been a random attack.
If there is a connection between the victim and the killer, we'd expect to find him in a week. You know you're in for a hard haul if it's a stranger murder. And the more I looked at it, the more I was beginning to believe this is what we've got.
Detectives carry out door-to-door inquiries in the hope that someone may have seen the killer.
It's imperative to identify anyone who might have seen anything suspicious at all. The house-to-house inquiries identified a witness in the building opposite Wendy's house, and that witness saw Wendy stood at this front door here with a man in front of her. He noticed that Wendy was wearing carpet slippers. The witness saw the same man go down the side of the house. And Wendy actually peered round the corner as if watching the man go up the road. She watched him go past the end of the house and towards the conservatory at the back there. This was about 6:20 in the evening. So half an hour later, the witness saw that same man come out of this door here, and then he turned and ran up this hill underneath the railway bridge out of the witness's sight. The witness described the man as a white male, about 35 to 45 years old, medium build, about 5'6" to 5'9" in height. He couldn't describe him facially, but he was able to describe his clothing, particularly a jacket, which was typical of the type of jacket that is often issued to prisoners when they're released from prison, which was obviously another major line of inquiry for us, given that Wakefield Prison is about 500 yards away from Wendy's front door.
Whilst detectives search for Wendy's killer, her daughter Tracy has to come to terms with her mother now being the focus of a murder investigation.
She was my mum and did everything mums do, but she was also like my best friend. Spoke to her every day. I always had a little phone call when I moved down to Essex. Throughout our whole lives, we've been really, really close. She was one of the kindest, most sweetest people you've ever met in your life. When we used to go on our holidays together, me and my sister with my mum, and my grandma and granddad as well. She loved Scarborough. She gave me away at my wedding. She was fretting about having to do a really nice speech, and would she let me down? And I said, no, Mum, you've never let me down, ever. And like, she's at my side. She was at my side throughout. And then she stood up and gave this fantastic speech.
These moments you will treasure because they mean the most. So let us raise our glasses, and while I propose a toast to the bride and groom.
Bride and groom.
Never in a million years did you imagine that, you know, your wedding video is going to end up on Crime Watch. And it was to try and find the man that had murdered my mum.
The detectives are focused on tracing the suspect seen leaving Wendy's house. One line of inquiry is that he may be linked to the notorious local prison.
This is Wakefield Prison in front of us. Category A prisoners. They're all high-risk prisoners.
The prison is known locally as Monster Mansion, due to the number of high-risk offenders and murderers kept behind its doors. Former inmates include Charles Bronson and Jeremy Bamber.
We had no leads initially, but we got lots of suspects. And of course, another complication was that the clothing that the suspect was wearing is the same as the clothing that they used to release them into hostels from Wakefield Prison. So we would have to raise an action to trace them, where they're living, interview them, establish whether they've got an alibi or not.
Officers in the incident room are given the task of eliminating scores of registered sex offenders who live in the city.
Bear in mind that these people working on this inquiry, every door they knocked on could be potentially the murderer, so there's a lot of tension.
Meanwhile, the wider investigation is attracting a lot of attention from the public.
Much of the inquiry hinges on a mystery man seen calling at her home between 6 and 7. A witness in the printing firm across the road saw the man walk up behind the house before talking to Mrs. Speake. Police are warning women in the area to take extra care.
So as a result of that, we did get a call from a woman who can only be called Woman A. A man had tried to gain entrance to a house. The man was very much the same description as our suspect. When she went to work that morning, she'd seen this man. He walked past her a couple of times at the bus stop. She goes to work in Wakefield. She finished work. And then she arrived home by bus at 5 o'clock. Within seconds of arriving home, there's a knock on the door. And there's this man. He's asking, does she know this particular address? During the course of this conversation, she suddenly realises this is the same man who walked past me at the bus stop this morning. The alarm bells are starting to ring now. But she was so frightened. She couldn't move. And then her dog barked. It broke her out of this spell, and she realised she'd got to get this man away from her door. So she slammed the door shut. And of course we're thinking, well, is that what he did at Wendy's house? When she went back from the door, pushed her from the real world into his world. My opinion, she was the first choice victim. but she was able to give an e-fix. And that is what she produced. That was our prime suspect.
Detectives believe the suspect may be a stalker, and they call in a forensic psychiatrist to learn more.
The job of the profiler is not to play at being detectives. It's to take the information of the case and focus on details which is then useful to the investigation in terms of generating lines of inquiry. Stalking in this case is interesting. It has both a sort of practical aspect in that you're identifying a victim, but there's also a degree of sexual gratification to be obtained from stalking. You go through a process of following a person or picking a person out and imagining what you could do if the opportunity presented itself.
It's likely that woman A and Wendy were part of a stalking programme, and he would probably have stalked both of them previously. But, of course, his stalking of woman A ended when she shut the door. So he quickly reverted to another one of his stalking victims. He could have been stalking numerous people.
The profile helps investigators understand the killer's state of mind, but hard evidence will be needed to identify him.
A major element of any major crime investigation is the initial crime scene examination. They coin it the golden hour, because literally it's your opportunity as an investigator to get everything out of the crime scene you possibly can.
Here we've got the pair of stockings. They were knotted into a loop, as if it could be put around wrists or ankles in some sort of way to restrain her movement.
There was an imprint of a knife on the bedspread that he'd used to stab Wendy that didn't belong to the house. We never found the knife, was never recovered. On Wendy's body were found these blue shoes. Daughter's absolutely adamant they didn't belong to the mum. We established that they'd actually been bought from a charity shop in Wakefield a few days before. So we then realised that shoes were a significant element to the investigation.
With exhibits from the crime scene removed, investigators analyse every surface inside the house for fingerprints, blood and DNA.
It was our job to find any traces that there might have been whoever did this. Now, the only way to do that was to take the house to pieces. It had to be done. I remember even having the wallpaper taken off the walls. But that resulted in us finding the fragmentary fingerprint mark on the underside of the door handle, on the inside of the house. There was a tiny speck of blood, not all that far away from it, on the door frame. So the two together indicated that perhaps they'd been left there by the murderer.
One of the things that was clearly evident at the scene was there was a lot of blood. There was also semen found. They did a DNA profiling of the blood to see if that matched Wendy. It was a male profile, not Wendy's. In 1994, DNA was very much in its infancy, and similarly with the fingerprints. They'd have to be on the fingerprint database to be able to be picked up. There was no hit for both DNA and fingerprint. This person had no criminal record.
We've got an e-fit, we've got a partial fingerprint, we've got blood, we've got DNA, we've got witnesses who've seen this man. We got everything. But we got nothing, because we haven't found him.
And fear was spreading about the killer who was still at large.
Companies were getting taxis to get their workers home safe because nobody knew who this person was. It scared a whole community. It scared a whole county, Yorkshire.
In March 1994, Wendy Spees has been brutally murdered, leaving a family in mourning and a city in fear. The incident room has the killer's blood and a partial fingerprint from the scene, but there is no match on the national database.
Our experience was that people don't suddenly jump into this level of offending, but we could find nothing at all. We had the DNA from the scene that didn't match any other crime scene that we knew of.
Police rule out all ex-offenders from Wakefield Prison. The killer is still at large.
The mood in Wakefield was very sombre. People were shocked that such an horrific crime could have been committed in Wakefield.
Even companies were getting taxis to get their workers home safe because nobody knew who this person was. It scared a whole community. It scared a whole county, Yorkshire.
This was just 15 years, really, after Peter Sutcliffe, the Yorkshire Ripper, had finally been caught, and we'd had all those years of being told, don't go out on the streets on your own at night, and there, suddenly, not that long after, everybody was terrified of who might be standing on the doorstep. There was a great frustration, certainly by the police, that there was no record of this man at all on any DNA register.
The inquiry needs to reach the public to help generate new leads.
One of the most important things, the media. The media strategy brought us a lot of information.
The inquiry turned to houses on the Flanshaw estate in Wakefield, following news that a man fitting the description tried to get into a house belonging to a 24-year-old woman. It was a huge news story. It was our lead every night. It was the lead in the Yorkshire Post and the Wakefield Express. Everybody wanted to help find this very dangerous person and get him off the streets.
The photo fit appears in newspapers, on television, in pubs, bus stops and shops, in the hope that someone will identify the man responsible for Wendy's death.
Believe me, once you issue an e-fit, you will generate anybody who's got anybody who looks like it, they'll ring them in. Fortunately, we had quite a simple method of eliminating them, a blood sample or a hair sample. In the 6 months after the murder, we must have done about 2,000 people, which was good, but it wasn't getting any nearer to the killer.
The inquiry has amassed a mountain of evidence, but still has no viable suspect. Detectives in the incident room know there are hard miles ahead. They decide to return to the forensic psychiatrist for insight into the mind of the man they are hunting.
We briefed him on the case. We showed him the photographs of the scene.
What I'm always focused on, pretty much from the outset, is motive. What you need is very much the what and how in order to build up a picture of why. A pair of shoes appeared at the scene, which were not Wendy's. So the shoe cupboard had been ransacked, and that suggested quite strongly that the person was a shoe fetishist.
Richard Badcock brought me into the world of the shoe fetish. He was quite sure that everything in that scene was part of a fantasy killing.
I remember being in the newsroom when the footage first came in of the press conference that the SIO, Bob Taylor, had held. Today, police said they were anxious to speak to a mystery man, at which he'd revealed the picture of the blue mules. The fact that he actually brought them to the scene, knowing what he was going to do with them. I remember that we all just looked at each other in absolute shock, and I thought, this is a very different beast. This is a different beast altogether.
The whole point of a fetish is that it's a physical object that you need to be with you when you have a sexual experience in order to achieve full sexual gratification. There were multiple stabbings. There was a lot of rage involved. The experience, it was tension releasing to him. The whole thing was very reminiscent of a displaced state of rage against not a real-life relationship with Wendy, but a displaced relationship from another relationship with a woman. That was the primary motivating force behind the killing of Wendy.
This man, he does not look like a monster. And if he was a monster, she'd have shut the door.
It's a bit of a natural assumption to think that somebody who does something this extreme must be monstrous, not just in their actions here, but in their general life and in their appearance.
The one thing Richard said to me was this: he left a lot of clues at the scene. Don't expect to find that many next time. He will have learned. This may be part of a series, and he may strike again.
And then, detectives learn Wendy's killer may have already tried to claim another victim.
It was a Wednesday afternoon, and there was a knock on the front door. I got up, I went to the door, I opened the door, and there was a man standing there with a piece of paper in his hands. And he said, oh, I'm looking for directions. The first thing I noticed about him was his eyes. They were really dark and quite piercing. My gut was just telling me that something was not right about him. I couldn't put my finger on it. While I was talking to him, he was not looking at me, he was looking sort of behind me, like he was looking to see if there was anybody else in the house. And I looked down, and one of his feet was sort of shuffling towards the threshold. And then as I looked at him, and he was looking behind me, he tipped up this piece of paper and there was nothing written on it. And that was when I knew that there was something clearly wrong. So I literally moved, shut the door in his face and locked it. I rang the police. The police came. I did an e-fit, I had to do statements, I went up to the police station, I looked through loads of photos, but nothing came of it.
With active lines of inquiry running out, the detectives are released back to division, and hope now rests on the fingerprint and DNA sample.
Everything did eventually go quiet. He just disappeared completely and gone off the radar again. I think it left everybody with that fear that he could come back again one day.
12 months on from Wendy's murder. We've worked all the leads that we've got. We've still got information coming in, but nothing startling and hot. So yes, it's very disappointing. At times I would have said I would have put the investigation before my family. I know that's an awful thing to say, but when it grips you, it grips you.
As detectives are redeployed, a skeleton team is left on the investigation.
We scoured the country, we went to Europe, we tried everywhere.
Every similar murder that came up, we checked. I even checked suicides. We thought remorse might have been too much. We got anybody who fitted the description. So we left no stone unturned. Still no sign of our man.
I think the fact that every day I got up and felt this is the day they'll get him, I think kept me going.
I'm not just disappointed for myself or the officers. I'm really disappointed for Tracy that we haven't been able to deliver, and the burden is quite heavy.
I still had 100% faith in the fact they were going to catch him, because he told me that day in the incident room when he sat me down with my sister and said, "I will find the man who killed your mum."
In the background, the Fingerprint Bureau is still running checks against the national database.
Technology wasn't as good then as it is now. They worked tirelessly on that. It became a matter of routine for them. Again, every single day.
Weeks, months, years pass, and then a breakthrough.
A man is drinking in a pub in Bradford, and he's openly boasting about drinking and driving. What he didn't know was that one of the people he's boasting to was a police officer, who quickly arranged for him to be arrested when I left the pub. So after 6 years, thousands of suspects eliminated, hundreds of witnesses spoken to, and then it all changed. One Friday afternoon, the phone rings. "Oh, hello. It's the guy from Fingerprint Bureau." He says, "You're the SIO on the Wendy Spees murder." "Yes, I am." "Well, we've identified him." Well, I have to tell you, I ain't got a lot of hair, but he stood on end. I said, "Is the fingerprint good enough for court?" "Oh, yes, it is." So he's got some answering to do. How did his fingerprint get on the inside of Wendy's door? So I'm thinking, right, who is he? And that's when the name, Christopher John Farrow. We've got you, you bastard.
It's the year 2000, and 6 years since Wendy Spees was murdered in her own home. The incident room finally gets the breakthrough it's been waiting for.
So the fingerprint officer rings me. We've got a match. Christopher John Farrow. This is our man.
We identified where he lived. He lived in Cookridge in Leeds. I immediately got together some of my best officers, some who knew the case back to front, who had been involved in it for all those years. And the following morning, about 5 o'clock, we were in that house and arrested him.
Officers knocked on the door and he pulled the curtain back. And when they saw his face, the first instinct was, he's an absolute double of the E-fit.
He didn't ask why, he didn't kick up a fuss, as you'd expect someone to do, especially being turfed out of bed in the early hours of the morning. It just increases your gut feeling that you've got the right person.
Detectives finally come face to face with the man they've been hunting for 6 years.
Christopher Farrow, a very ordinary individual. But of course, it's what's behind the eyes. It's the monster's inside. That's the bit you can't see. And this guy was, without doubt, a monster.
The incident room can place Farrow at Wendy's house, but it's not enough to charge him with murder. They need more.
There were two key aspects that we wanted. One, his explanation as to how his fingerprint could have got in Wendy's house. And two, a blood sample from him so that we could do the forensic analysis. I did know that he had been, at one time anyway, a painter and decorator. And I had this horrible thought that maybe he'd been in Wendy's house for a legitimate reason at some stage and managed to leave his fingerprint on the way out.
Farrow has the right to remain silent, but instead he decides to engage.
He was very calm throughout the whole interview. Very quiet, very passive, completely emotionless. When he was asked specifically, "Do you know Wendy Speakes? Have you ever been to Wakefield? Have you ever been in her house on Barn Lane?" And he just looked straight at us and said, "No, I've never even been to Wakefield." Well, that really meant straight away that any excuse he could have had of having legitimate access to the house and leaving his fingerprint inside the house had gone.
It's then explained to him about the fingerprints on the inside of the door on an immovable object. Still nothing.
What we needed was just that final icing on the cake, that the DNA that he'd left at the scene of the murder actually came from him. So once the blood was out of his arm, we had it shipped down to the laboratory in London by motorbike. And I remember just, whilst the interview was going on, keeping an eye out for the phone ringing or anyone coming into the office and say, "We've got a hit," or "We haven't got a hit."
There's a phone call from the forensic lab to say his blood is the same as the blood at the scene. So this is put to him.
Look, we know it was you because we've got forensic proof that it was you. All of a sudden, you could see the coldness in him. And he just turned around and says, "Yeah, it was me." You know, after all those years, you eventually got someone who was saying, "Yes, it was me." Farrow has never, ever explained why he did what he did, why he chose Wendy Speakes, even why he was in Wakefield. And I remember thinking, you've come across as a very placid type of individual, but now that it's undoubtedly you and it's proven to be you, all you can do is say, quote, "Someone was going to get it that day."
He admitted the murder, but still insisted he didn't have a shoe fetish. He explains that his partner was about 8 months pregnant and it turned him sex down, so he decided he'd go and he'd rape a woman.
In his eyes, the killing was something that he'd been forced to do because of the way he'd been treated by other women.
Farrow is charged with the murder of Wendy Speakes. In November 2000, he goes on trial at Leeds Crown Court.
He came briefly into the witness box and he didn't say anything. I think they said, read the charges to him and he just said guilty. He wouldn't give me eye contact. He didn't say sorry. He didn't look at the family. He never once would look me in the eye. He just looked at the judge, said guilty, and then was taken away again, and that was it. That was it.
He decided to plead guilty, so he didn't actually have a full trial in court. So a lot of the questions about what he was doing there, why he did it, we wanted those questions answered and they weren't.
And I remember as he came out of the van, I remember he wasn't that far from me. And I just kept looking at him thinking, that's the last person my mum saw before she died.
Christopher Farrow receives a life sentence with a minimum term of 18 years for the murder of Wendy Speakes. He also receives 2 14-year sentences for rape and other serious sexual offences, and 4 years for attempted burglary at Woman A's house.
I didn't understand the system. I thought life meant life, so he'll stay in prison forever. Because 18 was the longest sentence, the others were concurrent. If he'd have been serving the sentences consecutively and not concurrently, he'd still be in prison for 50-odd years, which is the right sentence for someone like that.
As a person, I think Farrow is an animal. And this predatory killer takes her life, needlessly, just to satisfy his own sexual urges and destroys the family. Totally destroys the family. He has not shown any remorse. I don't think he's fit to be released ever. I don't think a woman is safe from this man.
Me and my mum, my sister, used to come here on our holidays. We used to walk up to the castle, and she just loved Scarborough. It was so peaceful. She loved the sound of the seagulls, and we always used to come and visit Anne Bronte's grave, because Mum always found it so sad that she died so young. And then we'd walk around the castle, and Mum loved the bit where the castle splits and you can see both bays of the sea, and that's where she said she wanted to have her ashes scattered. She had a lovely life up until, you know, that awful day in March, and she had a lovely life ahead of her with her family and to be a grandma. But that's why we'll never let her be forgotten. My mum believed in eye for an eye. I think a lot of people believe in an eye for an eye, especially when it's your loved one that's been murdered in such a horrific way. And I was never given that option. So the only option I have is stays in prison and we throw away the key. And that's what I'll continue to fight for.